Yeah, we test. Yeah, it's working, I think.
And our second speaker?
Yes, hello. Is it working?
Number 2?
Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, I hear myself. No.
Number 3?
Hear me? Hello? There it is. Okay.
Number 4?
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Oh, it's too loud. Too loud.
Thanks.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Hello, Dr. Mansour. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do hear you clearly.
That's good. Great.
Do you hear me?
We do, loud and clear. Thank you. Okay, we will start. Welcome everyone to this session, a roundtable discussion focusing on quality in online, open and distance higher education across borders. My name is Torin Gjelsvik. I'm the Secretary General of ICDE, the International Council for Open and Distance Education. We are a global membership association with the headquarters based in Oslo, Norway, and we have members in all world regions. We're an NGO and not-for-profit, and also in a consultative partnership with UNESCO. So today's topic, the lack of national and institutional policies for provisions of online open and distance education is a major governance challenge for the uptake and delivery of flexible learning provisions. It is also crucial that the national and regional qualification frameworks and quality assurance and accreditation agencies have included and integrated online open and distance education. So this roundtable will explore how higher education institutions can benefit from a freely available and internationally developed benchmarking framework to improve the quality of technology-enhanced education. The panel will discuss quality dimensions and indicators that particularly reflect online open and distance higher education in various world regions. I will also say that this session is prepared in collaboration with Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University in Dubai. HBMSU is one of ICD's long-standing members and also the initiator of the benchmarking framework and consortium that will be presented here today. And this will be a point of departure for the panel discussion. So we will first, after my introduction, start with an introduction to the benchmarking framework from Professor Mustafa Hassan, who is the Vice Chancellor for International Cooperation at Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University. And this presentation will be given through a short pre-recorded video. After the video, we will move to the roundtable, where we have 5 distinguished panelists with us, and I will briefly introduce them to you now. With us online, we have Dr. Mansour Alawar, who is the Chancellor of Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University. He's also a chairman of the governing board of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education, IITE, and he's also a member of the Executive Council of the Association of Arab Universities. And Dr. Mansour is, as you can see, with us virtually today. On my left side here, we have Professor Asha Singh Kanwar. She's the president and CEO of the Commonwealth of Learning, and one of the world's leading advocates of learning for sustainable development. Her areas of expertise include open, distance and technology-enabled learning, open educational resources, quality assurance, gender and organizational development. And on my right-hand side, we have Dr. Deborah Adair. She's the 8th president of the International Network for Quality Assurance Agencies in Higher Education, INCAHE, a worldwide association of more than 300 organizations active in the theory and practice of quality assurance in higher education. And in addition to her board role, Dr. Adair also serves as the executive director and CEO of Quality Matters, an international non-profit organization providing a scalable quality assurance system for digital learning. George Ubax is the Managing Director of ICDE, the European Association for Distance Teaching Universities. ICDE is Europe's leading institutional association in online, open, and flexible higher education. He's responsible for the development and support of the ICDE network, policies, and execution of its goals in online, open, and flexible higher education. And last but not the least, Professor Hussein Bagiro. He is the founder and president of the Western Caspian University in Azerbaijan. Western Caspian University was established in 1991 and was the first private institution of higher education in Azerbaijan. And his university is also one of the recent incoming members of the consortium for the benchmarking framework. So without further ado, I think we will move to the presentation given by Professor Mustafa Hassan in the video. So please, can we watch the video now?
Welcome to this very important roundtable discussing the quality of online, open and distance higher education across borders. I am Mustafa Hassan, the Vice Chancellor for International Cooperation at Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists representing key stakeholders in the higher education ecosystem. Also, I would like to thank the International Council of Open and Distance Education represented by the Secretary General, Mr. Ron, for her continuous support and partnering with the benchmarking consortium. In the coming few minutes, I'll summarize the benchmarking framework journey from the date of founding till today. In response to the global need for quality assurance in online education, the consortium was founded in February 2019, 1 year before COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the education system across the globe. The declaration was signed in Dubai by 9 founding members representing online and open universities as well as international associations. As of today, the number of participating consortium members reached 20, and they are spreading across 6 continents across the globe. This graph shows the journey, the benchmarking framework journey. And as you can see, following the launching of the consortium in February 2019, a technical committee was formed in 2020, and the technical committee aimed at developing the first draft of the benchmarking framework, and the framework was completed and announced in February 2021 during the President's meeting. Following that, in April 2021, pilot implementation of the framework was conducted in 5 participating universities, and a pilot implementation report was also presented and approved during the President's meeting in January 2022. In February 2022, a dedicated website was launched, and the global implementation started in March 2022. In the coming slides, I'll be focusing on 3 milestones. The first one is The first is the establishment of the first draft of the benchmarking framework, and the work of the technical committee that was represented by technical experts nominated by presidents of the benchmarking universities and associations. The technical committee actually aimed at developing dimensions and indicators that form the benchmarking framework, as well as agreeing on how each of these indicators and dimensions can be measured reliably using evidence and sources for data collection. At the end of the work of the technical committee in January 2021, a report was formed that showed the methods and techniques used by the technical committee to reach to the conclusion presented in the report. Because of the COVID-19 during this year, face-to-face meetings were impossible, and a group consensus technique called the Delphi method was used to reach consensus on the developed indicators and dimensions. This technique included several rounds of virtual meetings, as well as summarization and statistical analysis and presentations before and after each of the meetings. The first draft of the benchmarking framework included 6 dimensions covering teaching and learning, learner services, technology environment, outcome and impact on society, diversity and inclusiveness, as well as organizational aspects. Under each of these dimensions, varying number of indicators were included, with a total of 39 indicators. The second phase included a pilot implementation, and the pilot implementation aimed at objectively measuring the indicators and agreeing on the easy to use scoring scheme and templates, as well as identifying areas for improvement in each of the dimension and indicators. The pilot implementation included 5 participating universities: Asia University, Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, the International Telematic University, University of Philippines Open University, and University of Turbuka. The pilot implementation started with an original of 39 indicators developed by the technical committee, and then for each indicator, data was collected to show the applicability of the indicator to the institution, the usefulness of the provided rubrics, the availability of the data sources to document evidence, and ways to clarify the suggested evidence list. Also, experts were provided the opportunity to give recommendations on how to improve the objectivity and reduce ambiguity on each of the indicators. The result of the pilot implementation was presented in pilot implementation reports. Also, the pilot implementation report presented visual presentation of the implementation data to show the comparative analysis between different participating institutions across dimensions as well as across individual indicators. As I mentioned during the journey, the benchmarking framework we developed a dedicated website, and actually this website has 2 levels of accessing. The first level you can see on the left side where any university, any individual who would like to explore more about the benchmarking framework can go to this one and know more about the framework in general, as well as a summary of the results that is not showing details about participating universities and their scores. On the other hand, there is, as you can see on the right side, there is a member-only area where there is a dashboard for entering data, which greatly facilitates data entry because we all know that data collection is time-consuming. So this dashboard makes the selection of the data sources as well as evidence part to be very quick and very efficient. Also, there is a space for where you can see there is a forum space where experts can exchange knowledge and discuss ways for improvement. And this is just only for member areas, for members only, and any organization that is going to join the consortium will be given access to the member only. Also, the member only area is supported by IT support. So if there is any problem in data entry or any difficulty in assigning the scores and so on, so the support part is actually available for the member area only. Currently, more than 12 participating universities are using the member area for entering the data. We expect that the first implementation will end in June 2022, with a report to be released in late July. Also, for the rest of the year, from July till January, experts will be exchanging ideas about the improvement plans and how can they improve their scoring across the different indicators. And this is actually where we are focusing on, because this is where improvement can happen by exchanging techniques, strategies among different participating universities. We will learn from each other, and we will be working as a community for improving the care, for improving the experience of our learners and the online delivery across our universities. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very fruitful panel to be followed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Professor Mustafa. I hope it gave you a useful overview of what the benchmarking framework is and the foundation for this discussion. Now I will engage my panelists, and I wanted to invite you first. All of you will give you the floor and give you 3 minutes. You will come back, don't worry, but 3 minutes each, and I'll try to be strict. You'll have 3 minutes each to address the main potential and challenges with the topic of this discussion: quality assurance of online, open, flexible higher education. So I'll start by giving the floor to you, Dr. Mansour, for your main perspectives, please.
Thank you very much. Dear Chair, dear esteemed colleagues and participants, I just would like to correct Turan, your introduction. Thank you very much for the nice one. But just to remind you that my term as the chairman of the governing board of ICDE came to an end by end of 2021. So I was honored to be chair that governing board from 2014 until 2021 for 8 years. Now, I would like to, first of all, to greet you all from Dubai. And thank you for this opportunity to share our experience and ideas for the future of quality assurance in online, open, distance, and technology-enhanced higher education. When Hamdan and Mohammed Smart University, ladies and gentlemen, was established 20 years ago, it was the very first e-learning academic institution in the United Arab Emirates. Unique to the existing education landscape at that time. Thus, even standards for online universities were not there in the beginning. But however, I should say this, that the Commission of Academic Accreditation in United Arab Emirates was so bold and brave to put forward for the first time in the Arab world standards for licensing such institutions, to create new standards to reflect the unique characteristic of online higher education and allow establishment of new types of education institutions. While the situation has been improving, ladies and gentlemen, the rapid digital transformation of education accelerated even more since 2020. Dictates that the need for all stakeholders, academic institutions, ministries of education, quality assurance and accreditation agencies to keep the same pace fast by continuously synchronizing the quality assurance standards with the new developments in the evolving field of education. This requires a sustainable dialogue among all stakeholders, facilitated flow of information and exchange best practices. This is one of the major challenges to be addressed if we want to stay relevant and manage to ensure robust quality of online higher education without slowing down its progress. Other challenges for quality assurance to address include understanding the difference between the input and the output quality indicators, as well as accommodating for national and regional contexts in quality assessment practices, while being alert to international developments and trends. In order to support the process and facilitate the digital transformation of education, HBMSU has been contributing expertise, resources. We have put forward and collaborating projects in the field of quality assurance and accreditation. In 2010, HBMSU and Swiss Center for Innovation and Learning of the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland at the time developed the first edition of the Middle East e-learning quality framework. We called it MILQ, M-E-L-Q, which builds actually on a solid ground of research and practical experience. MILQ was built on a set of quality criteria which are theoretically sound and supported by empirical evidence to assess the quality inputs necessary for digital transformation of a learning institution. The framework had to be localized for the Middle East and the university to take into account regional context. In 2022, just current year, ladies and gentlemen, the 2.0 edition actually was developed again with expertise from HBMSU as well as the University of St. Gallen, and added new concepts such as an AI and various dimensions of digital transformation of education, and revised the quality criteria accordingly. MILQ 2.0 measures the readiness of any institution that aims to be digitally transformed. The second flagship, launched by HBMSU and its partners in 2019, and the benchmarking framework on online and open smart technology-enhanced higher education. The participating members initiated the work to establish a common understanding of the quality criteria that are particularly reflective of the uniqueness of the online higher education and measures the quality output. While the benchmarking consortia started before the pandemic, its work even became more relevant during the pandemic, with many universities shifting from conventional face-to-face to online education. The benchmarking framework is an important milestone as it allows participating universities to use comparative analysis for evaluating the performance across the critical dimensions relevant to online, and I think Professor Mustafa has alluded to that part. The quality assurance itself, ladies and gentlemen, is a continuously evolving field, and the standards and criteria for assessment of education is not carved in stone. It's our responsibility to stay informed and continue to engineering higher education to stay relevant to the fast developing world.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mansour. May I now turn to you, Debader, for your introduction?
And certainly, and thank you, Torin, for the invitation to come and to reflect on the framework. So I think I would echo some of the comments just made, in the fact that online learning is not, in fact, new, and that we do have quite advanced practices in online education in some parts of the globe. But the pandemic was a punctuation point, I think, for us. And so my comments, rather than sort of framing them as a challenge, to really frame it as an opportunity for the field. We all saw firsthand how challenging it was to provide a quality education for students during the rapid pivot to online education during the pandemic. And in fact, you know, we are trying to use terminology for that period as remote education as opposed to online education because of the lack of opportunity to do the kind of careful pre-planning that good high-quality online education has developed over time. But we know that students and instructors struggled with basic access to the learning and the technology and the connectivity, and a lack of familiarity and training with the online format. But in spite of that, the promise of online education to widen access to education was evident. In many places, including in the US, there was much dissatisfaction and many complaints about poor quality and learning loss. And yet, both faculty and students were attracted and remain attracted by the convenience and availability of a modality and demand that has broadly increased. So I think one of the core benefits, if you can even speak of the pandemic as having any benefits, is really, if you think about this in terms of change management, it is a period of unfreezing, of giving us the ability to move away from less informed positions about online, as in online is always inferior in terms of a modality, but now allows us to begin speaking with more nuance. What works, what needs improvement, and that forced move for the field to engage with technology and move online has given us this first set of conditions in which we can have conversations like this. So online education as a tool and a solution to widen access. Our challenge right now is just to improve the way we do it, to learn how to do it well. There is a significant and growing body of research around learning design and established best practices in the field. There is a larger gap globally in understanding best practices for online programs and for online educational providers. And we have to also recognize the diversity in the field. There are fully online educational providers that have been built for that purpose, but there is also growing numbers of traditional universities that are maintaining and growing their online learning activity. And there's providers outside of academia. So I would conclude by saying we do very much need efforts like this one to help us build an international community of practice that can build and benchmark expertise. We could be, and I see it, and already are, grounding this in existing research and then using it as an action research project to generate evidence-based practices as models. And as quality assurance and higher education practices evolve as they must, the quality assurance community also can and will evolve. So I think that we are working and doing this together, and this kind of framework and this kind of conversation is what helps us do that well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deb, and thank you for highlighting the opportunities from the perspective of the quality assurance agencies. I will now turn to you, Professor Bagirov, as one of the younger universities and the newcomers to this consortium. How do you see the opportunities and challenges with quality assurance from your perspective in Azerbaijan?
Thank you for giving me the floor. At the same time, thank you for having me here. It's about International Council for Distance and Online Education and Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, where we're become later member of working group. Western Caspian University is a 32 years old university. It is private but social oriented. We have around 5,000 students, among whom we have always had actually around 20% of students getting the education and distant based. Mostly they are working class people who need to work, not just to pay tuition. Most of them are not doing that, but just to live and to support their families. But online education, or pandemia actually, which made online education just necessity of day, changed the situation radically. And my understanding is that if not pandemia, probably we had to find other serious reason to understand the philosophy of online education. It's opportunity for students and challenges for teaching staff, universities. And it's not only related with changing, how to say that, hardware of universities to be able to massively provide students with classes online. Actually, we did it very quickly. 120 auditoriums were quickly in a couple of months equipped with basic and then more sophisticated equipment to make possible for teachers. When it was possible, by the way, pandemia was introducing to governments very different regimes, that sometimes stay at home totally, or sometimes a certain number of people can come to universities, so they could come, stay in empty or semi-empty classes and teach for everybody who there or sitting at home in the front of computers. But most challenging things were discovered on the way. First of all, distant learning found its natural place. It is part of online education, or it is just a segment of online education, because traditionally it was students who coming a couple of times a year to university for a decade, 10 days or 15 days, having intensive classes, examinations, and going back. But online technologies let us to see how seriously we can change quality of this distance education as well. Then, why challenges for teaching? For students, because it's endless resources of knowledges accumulated in web and cloud, because flexibility of education. But for teachers, it demonstrated clearly something which challenging now so-called traditional education. Teachers, already we were feeling that it is a growing gap between even quality assurance indexes, which were formerly following, and effect of this kind of education based on traditional principle, which is teachers in most of places were teaching what they know. Then we understood that it is actually 10,000 years old principle, and if, by the way, technology of photography was invented when still many local societies were living traditional life, not touched by so-called modern civilization. And then you can find a lot of photographs in internet, how looked learning process on these places. You will see young people sitting around of elder of tribe, and he is with gesticulation explaining them things which are important for their well-being. And then if you look for a photograph of 20s or beginning of 21st century classes, you will see that architecture changed. It is not education, it's architecture. Or furniture is changed. This is another sector of industry. But a teacher is gesticulating absolutely the same way as a tribe leader was doing, and class sitting with same image in the face as it happened 10 times or in total different stage of civilization. Because teacher was giving to students what he knows. But from one side, the amount of knowledge is, even in one sector, grown so big that there is no teacher who knows everything, even in his own sector. So class function of teacher, of mentor, lecturer, had to change, and online education demonstrated clearly. You cannot sit in the empty class in the front of computer and teach as if nothing happened, because students force as well to go and look for knowledges, and they see that sector has much more achievement than a teacher can provide them. So teachers need to change into coach, instructor, or someone who can help them to see what kind of problems in the future students after graduation will be challenged to sort out, and then helps them to understand what kind of knowledges will be important for them and how to find them independently.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Baguido. I'll now turn to you, Professor Kanwar. Commonwealth of Learning, your organization already do a lot of work with ministries and higher education institutions in all the Commonwealth learning countries. How does your membership with the benchmarking framework relate to the work you're already doing? And what do you see as the main potential and challenges?
Thank you for inviting me, Jorun. It's good to meet everybody here. And good to see Prof. Mansoor, even though he's on the screen and not here personally. But as Torun said, I represent the Commonwealth of Learning, which is an intergovernmental organization which works in 54 member states around the world. And we were set up 35 years ago to bring at that time there was a lot of brain drain. People were leaving, for higher education to the West and not returning to developing countries. So Commonwealth heads of government set up this organization to strengthen tertiary institutions within the home countries by providing distance learning and technology-enabled education. So quality has always been a challenge for us from the very beginning, because everybody thought distance education is second chance, second rate, and so we were sort of always under pressure to help member states develop tools. So we started in the beginning 35 years ago with quality assurance guidelines for open and distance learning. Then when the open educational resources movement came, then we've developed a framework for determining the quality of OER. After that, MOOCs came, so we have guidelines and accreditation mechanisms for MOOCs for member states. And more recently, we've developed 3 layers of quality assurance tools. One is at the course level, which covers the pedagogy, the formats for presentation, and gender-responsive materials. We also developed a quality assurance rubric for blended learning and implemented this in East Africa, the 4 East African countries, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Kenya. And in Kenya, this was so successful that 90% of all universities in Kenya have now adopted it. So which is a good outcome, because it's gone beyond our expected level of support. And at the institutional level, we've also developed some benchmarks, for people to look at quality at the institutional level. But because we deal in such different contexts, and most of the 47 out of the 54 countries are developing, we try to reach the last person in the queue. And I'll tell you that what are the challenges Torun asked me, for quality assurance. I think for us, one of the biggest challenge for quality assurance is that how can we have quality with equity and inclusion? And for example, in northern Bangladesh, we support these boat schools. So before the pandemic, these boat schools would pick up the children from their homes on the riverside, and they would study the whole day, and they're equipped with solar panels, computers, and benches, and drop them home. But when the pandemic happened, the parents were not able to support the children, so the teachers were being picked up from their homes and being brought to these communities. And there would be little groups of 6 children sitting on mats and one teacher teaching them for 45 minutes, then go to the next group and the next group. And this is how, they found a creative way of ensuring. So that's for us the biggest challenge. How can we have quality with equity and inclusion? I think the second big challenge for us is that how can quality focus on learning outcomes and not be sort of so concerned about, delivery modes. Is this online? Is this distance? Is this something else? Ultimately, it's the outcome that counts. So how does quality actually look at that? And I think the third challenge for us is that how can quality assurance agencies be nimble and agile to embrace emerging developments? Quality assurance is always operated in very structured contexts. Now there's so much openness. So how do the twain meet is the question. Back to you, Torun.
Thanks, Asha. Thank you very much, and also for highlighting the aspects of inclusion and equity often being missing in the quality parameters. I was in a panel yesterday organized by the UNESCO Institute for International Educational Planning, and their recent report on flexible learning pathway shows exactly this, that the quality assurance system, they're often input-based, and often this addressing the equity and inclusion is missing. So thanks you for highlighting that. Now over to you, George, and the European perspective, and the perspective from your association for the European distance teaching universities.
Yeah, thanks, Torun, and I'm happy that we are all face-to-face back again after so many only online meetings. When we developed the e-excellence benchmarking system some 15 years ago, we had to do 3 updates because innovation in higher education is going so fast. And we are now already predicting much more in the mainstream the uptake of online education, as we see 3 developments supporting that. First of all, it's the COVID crisis, the emergency remote teaching asks for further expertise, specialization, and educating the educators in the use of digital didactics, and having more programs online in the mainstream education. Secondly, universities tend to extend from campus-based educations from 18 to 25-year-olds towards continuing education more and more, next to open education. And for continuing education and the related micro-credentials, also there, shorter online programs are envisaged to grow more and more. And then especially also in Europe, we have further internationalization. European university alliances of universities working together in international collaboration, which is also done further online. So looking at the first, on the response to the COVID crisis, we saw that there was a call for expertise, as of course the first online solutions were appreciated, but that is not the way forward. It's not really quality online education. Actually, it is bringing us back after so many years that we were developing. It was giving online education actually a bad name. And we therefore also promoted research and expertise in quality online education with our e-excellence system, but also in response to the European Commission call for programs to support universities European-wide in the uptake of further professionalizing online education. And therefore we have built a program, which is a course program, it's running at this moment, called Digital Pro. It's available to all universities, in which you have 3 sections related to the 3 formats on online education, which is hybrid, synchronous hybrid education, blended education, and pure online education, in which synchronous hybrid is presence of students online with the students on campus, this combination. Blended, where you have a conscious choice of what you do face-to-face and what you do online, asynchronous and synchronous. And then the purely online education, which in definition is with the distance between the teacher and the student. So we are running these programs now, and they will also be available as open source after the project is ended. And in total, these are 3 times 6 course sessions. With the micro-credentials, we see that with continuing education, as a response to the need for upskilling and reskilling in line with the developments in Europe and in the world of digitalization of the economy, a very changing world. People cannot rely on their initial education, but need to do continuing education. In that sense, there is a call for more transparency and for a more real qualification, because people now get for continuing education certificates and badges, and these are not really regulated. It is a bucket of certificates when you follow many courses. So we are regulating that by micro-credentials and giving them the transparency of indicating the workload, the level of achievement, the learning outcomes are described, also the assessment method and so on. So micro-credentials are very important for online short courses, and they can be stackable to higher degrees. I'm also representing as coordinator the European MOOC Consortium, in which we also develop many online offerings for continuing education. The European Commission has launched a council recommendation in that sense, in that they have are indicating to all the countries in Europe that they need to develop a policy on the adoption of micro-credentials in the educational system. So there's really work to be done, and quality assurance agencies also following this and are partner in this development. And lastly, with the European University Alliances, you can imagine that there is a quality question there by developing more and more joint master programs, joint doctoral programs, joint micro-credentials, and supporting that with virtual mobility also, is how the quality agencies assess programs that are developed by different universities, of an average of 7-8 universities per alliance. Then you have to do with several quality agencies for one program. So these are also elements that are forcing us to really adapt and anticipate on these developments that are bringing more and more online education to the mainstream.
Thank you, George, for highlighting the complexity and for explaining this to us. So I see the time passes very quickly. We want to open the floor for questions from the audience too, but I want to invite the panel to reflect on one question. So this discussion is about quality assurance, quality enhancement of online distance education across borders. Quality assurance frameworks are often national or regionally. But now we talk about global collaboration, and the benchmarking framework is an open consortium, open to any educator all across the world, open to university associations, and also quality assurance agencies. And Dr. Mansour, Asha Kanwar, Professor Bagirov, and George Ubaks, you all represent members of the consortium. Deb, you represent the International Quality Assurance Agency. So I see, well, from the members in the consortium, it's very bottom-up approach, transparent, work in progress, continuous improvement, as Dr. Mansour highlighted, whereas the quality assurance agencies, it's more of a top-down quality assurance, you could think. I would give the floor to you first to address this dichotomy, if you like, and if you see a potential for this multi-stakeholder collaboration through the framework and consortium.
Thank you. And I think there is, and I will give a specific solution here in a minute, but I will say that you know, the diversity that we're seeing now in higher education has been growing for some time, but it really has exploded in the last few years. And part of that is because of how technology has enabled it to move and grow. And it has not gone unnoticed by the quality assurance community because they're part of the ecosystem. And it is, I think, just even here during the conference in the last few days, having these side conversations, and you hear how the agencies are working on particular projects to address the diversity that we've been talking about, and recognizing that there are structural barriers in place, and in some cases political barriers, national barriers, and financial barriers. So it's, I think as a field, there's clear recognition that that we need to engage together. But I think that you know, it is a period of innovation for everybody, and I think it is about being transparent, One of the things that INCOHE has done and is in the process of finalizing and rolling out is creating a set of the ISGs, the International Standards and Guidelines, that is an evolution of the work that they did with their guidelines for good practice for quality assurance agencies. But now what we're doing is evolving that to baseline standards and then having a modular approach where we can focus and provide guidance and evaluation of QA agencies based on what they're doing with online education or micro-credentials or cross-border education. And providing that, because those kinds of international or global standards for quality assurance agencies, even as optional opportunities, help drive change, help provide another layer of motivation, right, to look at these issues. And I think the collaboration that's happening the ground up can only inform those practices. So I think that there's much goodwill and much intentionality right now, and we need to seize that and take advantage of it.
Thank you, Deb. This also relates to what you pointed out, Asha, about learning and education and quality assurance. Also, it all happens in a context. How do you see the future in the context of collaboration across borders in this domain?
Torun, I think this benchmarking exercise was very collaborative and consultative. So I think a lot of people have ownership of the product, and it's very helpful. But collaboration really is the future, because if you look at the Pacific Island states, Nauru has a population of 11,000 people in all. Now, they're not going to have a quality assurance body, but regionally, they can use a collaborative tool. Similarly, in the Caribbean, you've got the CARICOM quality assurance standards. So these kinds of benchmarking tools are very good at the regional level, because it's very difficult for small countries to develop these tools because of various resource constraints. So these kinds of collaborations, and they work actually. We've developed a transnational qualifications framework for the Commonwealth. We run actually, the ministers asked us to run a virtual university for small states of the Commonwealth. So they want mobility. And I'll give you an example of how it actually worked. One student in the National University of Samoa completed a diploma in sustainable agriculture from this virtual university, but wanted to do a master's in the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. But because everybody was sort of linked to this transnational qualifications framework, so she was able to transfer her credits and go to the next degree. So I think it does work, but this is the future. More openness, more collaboration, and concrete action.
Thank you, Asha. Dr. Mansour, the members of the consortium of the benchmarking framework, they come from all the various world regions. How is this complexity reflected in the consortium and in the framework itself? I'm sorry, we cannot hear you, Dr. Mansour.
In the increasingly globalized world, Torun, I think education is becoming more internationalized as well, meaning that information, faculty, and students move freely across borders in the real and the virtual world. In online education, borders matter even less, as we are all interconnected in online space. By the way, just one of the TV anchor programs, he came to the building of the HBMSU and he said, well, this is the first time I enter a university without students. So I think this interconnectivity between people in online space, they could be different. In the same manner, concepts of quality of education are mutually shared across borders, again. And while the quality levels of especially adopted practices and infrastructure may differ significantly among different countries, the quality bar can be and should be internationally defined to inspire all for continuous improvement. The context is important, but also we can learn from each other and share efficient practices and innovative solutions adopted in different countries and regions in the world. It is not only horizontal exchange of practices among universities themselves, but also informing other parties such as quality assurance and accreditation agencies of the latest development in the field to promote the evolution of education. The key, ladies and gentlemen, the key to symmetrical evolution of the field of online higher education and its quality assurance standards is to create a sustainable dialogue among all the stakeholders and ecosystem with free information exchange among its major elements, where the industries inform the higher education for their demands of certain skills, universities adopt their programs and anticipate major developments to equip the new generations of students with relevant knowledge and skills. Quality assurance agencies adapt actually the criteria for quality assessment to ensure the relevance and support for online universities. The expert communities and consult all parties to this. So I think what we have gained out of this particular quality framework is to bring actually world-class experts and contributing their ideas as part of technical committee, as Prof. Mustafa in the beginning alluded to, such global leaders as Commonwealth of Learning, UNESCO, ICDE, which is in China, various regional experts in quality assurance, like an Arab network for quality assurance in higher education. Lately, just only a few weeks ago, we had a seminar, a webinar online with all Arab universities under the umbrella of the Arab Association of Universities, just to promote the benchmarking, to be able to encourage the universities to be able to take that particular lead. All members benefit from experts meetings and virtual meetings. So I think benchmarking framework is not a perceptive tool, and members do not necessarily integrate all its quality criteria into their internal QA system. All members did draw ideas, integrate new criteria, or adopt some of practices learned during the implementation of the framework for their quality assurance. So I think that complexity, we came with 5 organizations and 5 universities. Today, the people who are applying to join the consortium is increasingly, and significantly increasing actually the numbers of the universities. We have so many universities. We have now even the University of South Africa, UNISA, the largest university in Africa and the oldest. And I think that's an indicator that this consortia is needed, best practices, sharing it, free exchange of knowledge. And I think I'm today, I have to say this, I'm grateful to be part of this discussion with our partner ICDE and our members in the consortium as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mansour. Very short, Professor Bagirov. What does it mean for your university concretely to be part of a global consortium and work on quality assurance through this framework?
It gives us, first of all, access to a transparent team working product, and to adapt our own university rules to already pass through approbation achievements in this way, which is new direction. So where we need really clear, achievable standards, and actually establishing new reality for students when they can have a better way of student mobility.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What about you, George? From the regional perspective, quality assurance frameworks, you work on the regional level in Europe. How do you see the potential for global collaboration?
Yeah, you can think of 2 ways, an extreme, so to say. One is that you would say there is you work towards a global agreement of the benchmarks that is so generic, but that you fill that in, connected with regional examples of good practices and in the context of each of the continents, and that you have an expert team that works on keeping the benchmarks up to date, but at global level. Or, and the other way around, is that the benchmarking systems that are existing regionally coexist next to each other including their regional examples, but that there is the experts of the different benchmarking systems are working closely together to keep each other up to date on how to fine-tune or update the benchmarks. So 2 ways possible there.
Thank you. Now, we'd like to open up the floor for questions. And we have an extremely skilled panel and very good global representation. So please feel free to raise your hands. I suggest we take a couple of questions, and then you can take note and reflect on what you would like to comment on because of the time. Yes, please, and then you after.
Douglas Blackstock, I'm the President of the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education and spent 20 years in senior roles in the UK body QAA. Thank you for your presentations and information about your benchmarking, and I think it's absolutely right at this stage in development to think about benchmarking rather than necessarily new rules top down which would prevent innovation. By the way, I disagree that all quality assurance is top down. I certainly worked in a system where it's co-created with the sector. Indeed, most external quality assurance involves experts and students drawn from the sector. But I think this is really, really important work that you're doing. And the commitment to sharing it publicly and openly, I think, is really important. We're at a really, really significant period of change. Before the pandemic, I was dealing with many countries, particularly east of, even in Europe as well, where online learning just was not recognised. It couldn't be a good degree. Well, what we had to do in the pandemic is everybody changed the way they were working, and we've discovered that quality exists, good degrees exist, students, the main thing for me about online or digital pedagogy, digital assessment, is it can democratise access to higher education to people from regions and countries that could never physically spend all the money to go abroad and study on another campus. So thank you for that, but I would say, I would caution against at this stage any idea of top-down rules on an international level. We're just beginning the implementation of the African standards and guidelines. Colleagues have developed their own standards and guidelines. There's just the implementation of the ASEAN standards and guidelines. Colleagues in Latin America have developed principles for quality assurance. I do not think a global system can work, because I'll tell you this, people may say I often say the Bologna process is brilliant, but we've still got countries that can't implement the full standards and guidelines for quality assurance. So we need to find regional ways of cooperating, I think, and then international cooperation to share practice rather than new rules.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution, and also for arresting my assumptions on the quality assurance agencies. Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Christoph Hansert from the German Academic Exchange Service, and we have exactly been supporting regional quality assurance systems in ASEAN, in East, West Africa, Central America, and I completely concur. My question would be to the audience, you're talking mainly about courses now, and focusing on courses, that is what I understood. What is about the complete ecosystem for the student, the library, and how is it working, student counseling? So if you have a complete distance course, and you are not physically anymore in the university, what's about all the other issues which are making a university? And is that part of the quality assurance process? We started access to free digital libraries courses 10 years ago, but the qualification of many university lecturers to know how to deal with free digital libraries is still not very much known around the globe. So I was just interested whether these aspects will come into your benchmarking system.
Thank you. Was there a third? Yes, and then you.
Thank you very much. My name is Alpha Wuri. I am the Minister of Technical and Higher Education for Sierra Leone. May I say that I find this most exhilarating, considering the fact that investments 20 years ago by international agencies have supported primary and secondary education in most African countries. And as at now, the numbers that require tertiary education is getting bigger and bigger. One expects tertiary education not only to be university education, but all the layers. By that I mean technical institutes, community colleges, polytechnics, and things like that. And the gap there would be instructors or tutors. So the use of online access would be vital at this time. However, most countries do not have policy frames that allow accreditation of these various degrees, or let me say, instructions that exist online. So the very first need or help is how to standardize a policy framework for it to go into national qualification frameworks, such that you can get a level of accreditation into these courses you could access. The next issue I would want us to look at, maybe one could consider, as you use the word hybrid type of learning, in which you still have standard students accessing colleges and things like that, but adopting some of the programs that are outside to improve the quality. I'm saying this because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we worked with Commonwealth of Learning, and I could remember Asta supporting how you improve teachers in primary schools that had such a blend as you go along. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, lady.
I'm Nadia Badrawi. I'm the president of the Arab Network for Quality Assurance, and I'm working with Dr. Hamdan actually a lot on this benchmark, quality benchmark. I appreciated very much the work that had been done and distributed and all over the world. But my second question to this panel, actually, when I come to accreditation, and it is very important at the end that any degree or any whatsoever coming from open university or distant learning university to be accredited. Should we think of developing or establishing an international quality assurance and to accredit this university, or should we go to the national quality assurance agency to accredit this? And if we go to the national quality assurance to accredit it, how can we be sure that they will follow the benchmark, the quality benchmark that had been developed in the consortium or everywhere? I mean, I know that, say, Dr. Hamdan University had been accredited by the UEA, and the same in Egypt, the same in everywhere. But with this internationalization, should we develop an international body to accredit this distant university? Because distant university is not a national university. Usually, it is an international university. This is my question to this panel.
Thank you. Great question. Okay, I think we need to stop. Okay. I'll give the floor to you for a short question, and then we will have some responses.
Thank you so much. I'm Judith Eaton. I'm the President Emeritus of the Council for Higher Education Accreditation in the U.S., and in a way, I'm answering Nadia's question. What I'm hearing from this panel and several others at this conference is that the role of quality assurance bodies, external quality
I'm sorry,
assurance...
I'm not sure if your microphone is working.
How is that?
Yes,
okay,
better.
All right,
So Dr. Mansour also can hear.
All right, and I'll talk fast. Not only at this delightful panel, thank you very much, but also at other sessions I've attended, I think I'm beginning to hear that external quality assurance, as represented by typical quality assurance and accrediting organizations, is changing, and that we're seeing a kind of organic growth of internal quality assurance, a new type of it, where universities, distance open universities, other types of educational providers and traditional institutions are taking the quality handle, the quality role, and running vigorously with it. And maybe they'll look to the quality assurance bodies that are out there to reaffirm. Excuse me, but the onus may be shifting for primary responsibility of judging quality. this restructuring would take quite a while, but I'm seeing the beginnings of a different way of thinking about external quality assurance as represented by quality assurance bodies and accrediting bodies, which may mean Nadia and Douglas were all gone out of business.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so trying to summarize the questions before giving the floor to you, there's a comment about transparency and co-creation of knowledge, which has also been a main theme during this conference, I think. There's also standardization of quality frameworks, the term hybrid learning, the international versus the national quality assurance paradigm, and the question about the complete ecosystem and if this benchmarking framework only focuses on the course, quality assurance of courses. And I think we need to clarify that first. Perhaps who would like to start? Is the benchmarking framework only focusing on the courses, or is it more? Dr. Mansour.
I think it is much more than a course. It's an organization itself. I think the drive for an online learning, ladies and gentlemen, I have to be a little bit bold, but bear with me. That's my belief. I might be wrong, but I think online learning is newly being introduced to the sets of universities. Universities with legacies, actually. It's very, and the obsession that they would have is difficult for them to change on an organizational level. Now, people who are willing to be digitally transformed, they must have lots of dimensions to be able to change in order to get into this. I'm just catching not on this part, but also on the gentleman who asked about the ecosystem. There are 4 components at all times, with and without technology. If there are learners at all times, faculty, curricula, as well as learning environment. Now the technology has actually transformed these 4 components differently. The learner will become responsible for their own learning, their own pace. I'm talking about this region, geography. People would think always, this is the job of university, this is the job of a school. You are a learner, you will be responsible. The faculty role, I think Professor from Azerbaijan alluded to, the role of the faculty, that's the biggest challenge that we have now with conventional and traditional universities. They are teaching, they are not mentoring. That is why we have a problem in this part of the world on terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of technical skills into the matter. So the role of the faculty changes, the curricula itself and the assessment itself changes. People are still, accredited agencies, they are still limited to summative assessment and formative assessment. While the online learning and smart learning is all about individualization, then it comes to something called the continuous assessment. That is changing. The learning environment overall, the learning environment has to have an ecosystem. Yes, it has to be learner services, learner relationship management, the learners should become passive. So I think the benchmarking criteria overall, it assesses the organization, the university itself. What would be the outcome, the output of this university?
Thank you, Dr. Mansour. May I turn to you, maybe, Deb, about the question about the international versus the national quality assurance?
Well, if it's okay, I'm going to try to address both Douglas's comments about the different levels, as well as this sort of thought model of could we rethink how we have the whole ecosystem, is what I'm hearing. I'm going to try to combine them both in an answer. We'll see how that goes. So I think, and I heard this at many sessions throughout this conference, there's this a very natural feel that we don't need more standards, we don't need more regulations, we need to collaborate and work together and build organically. And at the same time, I have heard the appeals for why can't we have legislation that makes sure we have, that there's student mobility across borders and recognition of student learning across borders? And why don't we have policies for internet access, broadband access widely, national policies about that? And why don't we have finance? Well, that means you have to involve, you know, that there have to be multiple layers involved to get to that point, because not all of those things are going to happen organically. So we, you know, there is a whole ecosystem, obviously, for higher ed, and there are roles. I think it's a very intriguing question, though, about how much can those roles change? And I guess what I was left thinking about your question was, who's responsible for the student in a model where quality assurance is international? Are we ready yet to have, you know, the institution is responsible for its students, but if we're putting that on an international stage, then who is ensuring that? I don't know. I have to really think about that, because that's very fascinating to me. So that was a non-answer, but I just wanted to say wonderful question.
Thank you, Deb. Colleagues who would like to comment on any of the other questions, please, Professor Bagiri.
First of all, about remark, actually. It's a really totally different philosophy when experience and norms or standards, not fixed by figures, but through experience of universities, come from down for consideration of all. And it is a more effective way because it doesn't come from laboratories where experts are sitting and inventing and creating different kind of standards. So it's much more achievable, because you know how certain university achieved. In dashboard you see what university, which university, how they did. It attracts your attention and you know how they did it. Second, it is very good, I don't want to use pressure, but soft way to impact on national legislations, to let online education be just to have liberty to go ahead and show its potential. Because in many countries it is not prohibited but not legal. Accreditation documents, diplomas, etc., certificates. So it is a very good way to demonstrate in a practical way how things should be changed. And I see already products. I am from a country where bureaucracy has good appetite to regulate everything. But even there, National Accreditation Agency published list of international agencies which they recognize, which means if you're accredited there, they take it into consideration. That's it. So which is, to me, a very good way to act and let universities to get more international, join to international standards, and then keep going their development.
Thank you.
Yeah,
a comment from
maybe on
George?
We often make the distinction between the quality assurance processes and the accreditation, as the accreditation is often a yes or no, meaning that the program is of high quality, mostly also on content and fit for what the student needs to learn. As quality assurance is more on the processes, does the process lead to the learning outcomes? And there we often handle this separately, and the benchmarks that we are using are fully focusing on the process of the learning process towards the outcomes, not looking at the content or the accreditation at that point.
Thank you. Asha, can we reach the goal of establishing a shared understanding of quality assurance of online and distance education globally?
You know, I think the future where we all have to think about is, for example, in Canada, they say that if you get a heart attack in a taxi, you're probably more likely to survive because your taxi driver is probably a cardiosurgeon. And this is the question of, you know, the whole issue of accreditation, because they are not recognized in Canada. So we need more accreditation mechanisms across borders, and especially with this kind of refugee influx which is happening now. I mean, there are people qualified, and this is trained human resource, which is going to waste. So that is a big issue, because ultimately it's about practical problems. It's not just, processes and procedures on paper.
Thank you. Thank you for giving that very good example. We are running out of time. Thank you very much. I want to thank my esteemed panelists for your contributions, for giving your global, contextual, regional perspectives, insights, and thank you to the audience for your questions and engagement. It's been a pleasure having you. I just want to close by saying that also ICDE, my organization, believes in, of course, international collaboration, co-creation of knowledge, and transparency in the processes of quality assurance. And we also talk a lot about quality enhancement, not only assurance, in the quality network of ICDE, which also George is a part of. So thank you very much. If you're interested in knowing more about ICDE, there's a few leaflets down here with some links, so please feel free to grab one on your way out. Thank you very much.